I'm Perry Gruber, the founder of Copiosis. Welcome to our live stream, our weekly live stream every Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. We talk about the hard questions that people have asked us about Copiosis, and then hopefully we have good answers to answer them with. I'm here with my co-host, or actually my host, and Devil's Advocate. Is it okay to call you Devil's Advocate, or are you concerned about that term?
No, we're good.
Okay, my Devil's Advocate, Jill Dell, and she's the one coming up with the tough questions, and I'm providing hopefully some enlightened answers. If you're here for the first time, I'm going to ask you to please go and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click that bell, because when you do, you will be notified of all of the new live streams that we schedule and new videos. And as a matter of fact, this Saturday we have another live stream with Christopher Hatton where we're going to be talking about the 5 power pillars and how they, I'm just doing some admin stuff while I'm talking, how the 5 power pillars impact the world and what we're doing to use the 5 power pillars against themselves to usher in the Copiosis transition plan. So that's Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. You can watch live and even participate in the conversation. And if you're relatively new to Copiosis and you don't know a lot about what we're doing, but you're interested in finding out more, you can go to this website here, where we have all kinds of information about our innovation, including the transition plan, how we're implementing the transition plan, and the success that we're seeing. And then finally, if you're interested in finding out where the money goes that we get to implement the transition plan, you can go to this website, where we lay out our entire budget at this point, where all the money is going to support this innovation. And if you'd like to become a patron of our work for as little as $1 a month, you can go to that website too and register there. All right, let's get on with it. Jill, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk about the reputation account. We visited this topic a little bit in another session, but there's something that's been disturbing me, I guess, about it. So I want to kind of explore that a little bit more, because a reputation can be a very complex thing, right? And the way that you are perceived by one person may be completely different than the way that you're perceived by someone else.
That's true, yeah.
So, you know, and so I can see it as being a means of, just like what's going on now, where people are being what they call culture canceled. They're being right, and they're being because somebody doesn't like their current belief in something, they're being vilified, and it's just another person's opinion of who and what you are, right? So maybe you could really explain the concept, what that thing is and how it functions, or how you anticipate it will function, and why it would even be necessary.
Right. So this is a good topic. There are quite a few people who have written us over the 7 years of implementing Copiosis who've had this concern. And so talking about it in this hour is a really good idea. And I think we have enough information to stretch through the whole hour. So let's just do that. So the reputation accounts are the tool that individuals have in Copiosis that allow them to interact with strangers, people they don't know. And as you can, if you can imagine that people in society, a global society, who are interacting with one another, because you can't know all 7.5 billion people on the planet, you need some way to be able to determine whether or not the person you're considering working with or doing something for is someone that you want to work with or do something for. So today, we kind of have reputation accounts today in the form of like a resume. So when you apply for a job, you send in your resume, which basically conveys a component of your reputation. The hiring
Yes.
manager gets to look at you on paper, literally on paper, and then decide whether or not they believe you have the qualifications and the skills and the reputation, if they're asking for references, to apply to fill that position. I wanted to say
Right.
compete. That's why I was hesitating, but because I don't believe in competition, that word was sticking in my throat. So today they have that kind of reputation. There's another type of reputation account today. It's called your credit score. So when you're going to buy a car or a house or something like that, or even rent an apartment, the people who are renting the apartment or selling the car, they're going to want to know what your reputation is for repaying debt. And so they look at your credit score to determine that's your credit reputation to determine whether or not you have successfully proven the ability to pay down debt. The same thing goes with a bank. If a bank is giving you a loan, they're going to want some sort of assurance that you're the kind of person who repays money that's lent to you. So a reputation account, a recognition or a quantification of your reputation is nothing new. Even when it comes to
No, no, that's true.
even when it comes to personal
Yeah,
relationships.
that's
So
true.
like, let's say for example, I want to date your friend, and your friend knows me, but she doesn't know that I know you or that you know me. So she might come up to you and say, "Hey, Jill, I'm seeing this guy. He's really cool. His name's Perry." And you might go, "Oh, Perry, huh? I know a guy named Perry. What's his last name?" And blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that you and your friend both know me. And she might say,
Yeah.
"What do you think of him?" That is, and whatever you
Yeah.
say
Yes,
is kind
that's
of
true.
like my
Right.
reputation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, so
Exactly.
as you can see
How I
today,
perceive you.
yes, how you perceive me, exactly. So as you can see, your reputation in this system is already being quantified, recorded, and reported to people who are interested in engaging with you in many different
Right.
ways.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the idea of a reputation is not new, and the idea of an account of your reputation is not new either. We just went through some of them,
Right.
and so people quake when they hear about the Copiosis reputation account, but they don't understand that we already are. Our reputations already exist in multiple accounts that are accessed all the time. In fact, with
Yeah.
social media, you could say social media like Facebook is being used more like your reputation account than ever, because oftentimes
Yes.
hiring agencies will look at your Facebook wall to see what kind of person you are. So the
Exactly.
idea,
Exactly.
so the idea of a reputation account is nothing new. Now, in
Right.
copiosis, in copiosis, what a reputation account is a collection of the um, all the things that you've done, good and bad, objectively recorded in this account. So it's it's the jobs you've held, the performance reviews you've received from those jobs. It's um, the qualifications you have, what schools you've been to, how you did in those schools. It's potentially even the things that you've done to receive MBR. So all of these things are in the reputation account, but there's also in the reputation account the accounts of other people. We call those declarations. So this is a part of your reputation account where people get to choose. They don't have to, they're not obligated to, but they can choose to file what's called a declaration in your reputation account. They can be positive or negative. So a person might put a declaration in your reputation account if you do something that they really like. Conversely, they might put a declaration in your reputation account if you do something that they don't like. Now, the difference is really interesting. The difference between our reputation accounts and reputation accounts today, like Facebook, is there's an organization that reviews every declaration and checks it for accuracy. Like, is it factually accurate that what this person is saying about Perry? Is it factually accurate that Perry went to this school and got this degree? And so if the declaration is not factually accurate, the declaration is removed, and potentially that members of that organization can put a negative declaration on the declaration maker for putting on a false declaration. Now, over time, a person's declaration account, well, I should say first, the declarations that exist in one's declaration account are only accessible by the person who owns that account. If that person wants another person to see those details, they can open that data up for the third party to see it. But even if they don't open that data, another person who looks at someone's declaration account can see kind of like a aggregation of what's in there, not the details, but an aggregation. And we haven't decided what that's going to look like yet. But it could be, for example, now this is just an example. I'm not saying this is exactly how it's going to be, but it could be, for example, green light, yellow light, red light, with red being the worst aggregation of reputation account, a yellow being, hey, so a red might be
Caution.
yeah, exactly. A red might be, don't work with this person. A yellow might be, he's kind of iffy. A green might be good to go. We also thought of it
Yeah.
being like the smiley face, like super angry face on the right and super happy face on the left, and everything arranged in between, right? So there would be some sort of an indicator that generally says what the, not the average, but kind of like the aggregation of all those reputation declarations and other information, how that shows, how that is generally summarized. So,
Right.
and so if a person wants to see Jill Dell's reputation account because they want to hire Jill Dell for some sort of thing that they're doing, and Jill Dell doesn't
Right.
want them to see what's in the reputation. So let's say Jill Dell has a yellow instead of a green. And so the hiring person says, we'd really like to look at some of those details that are causing this yellow. Would you mind sharing with us? And if you say no, you don't have to share. There's no compulsion to share what's in your reputation account. But since everybody is free, the hiring person doesn't have to hire you.
Well, why would there be a hiring person?
Well, good question. So like, let's say that that it's your passion to help me put an end to garbage collection. And as a result of my innovation, so I created this innovation that puts an end to garbage collection, but I can't implement the innovation by myself.
Can't do it by yourself.
That's right. And so, but I perceive that it's only going to take maybe 15 people to help me implement this thing. But I get 20 people who want to help do the work. I might say, okay, I'm going to take 15 of you, and then the other 5 are out of luck until, and this is what's really cool about Copiosis, until someone else takes my idea and also implements it. And then they need more people, and those 5 people can go work with that person. And I will still get. So that organization, people in that organization get MBR when they do it, and I still get MBR when those people do it too, because it was my original idea. And the people that are working with me get MBR. So no one's missing out on anything. But let's say, so now let's say there's 10 organizations around the world that are wanting to do this work, but you don't want to work for the other 9. You want to work for the one that originated it. And for whatever I don't know what that might be, but for whatever,
maybe it's in my area or whatever, maybe it's close to home, or
that's a good,
it's in my community.
That's a good reason. And so
of course I want to work close to home.
That's right.
I don't have to go to Brazil or something to do what I, to do that thing.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So,
So just like today in the Copiosis organization that's implementing Copiosis, we have a core group, and not everybody gets into the core group. If everybody got into the core group would be unwieldy. And so And also, we want to maintain a certain culture within the core group in order to keep the core group effective. So the same thing would happen here. So I would as the lead of this organization would want to preserve the culture and keep the high quality of people who are coming in. And maybe I'd be willing to let in some people who don't necessarily meet the qualifications, but are demonstrating some passion and some willingness to learn. So to
Yeah.
upskill them, because that
Yeah.
would provide me
Yeah.
MBR, right? I'm training these people,
Right.
right? So,
Right. Right.
but some number of people probably would not get in. And so I would have to have some way to filter who gets in and who doesn't get in. And that's where reputation accounts
Sure.
come in.
Okay. That
Yeah.
goes back to the reputation account.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the person in the red.
Yes.
With the red light.
Yes.
Right? Okay, because what we talked about previously is that everyone has the capability to improve themselves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but not everyone understands that concept.
The concept of
Or
self-improvement.
Yeah. I am who I am, and I just, because of all these beliefs that I have about myself, I just am who I am, and
Yep.
you don't like it, shut it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which kind of goes back to, right, being free to be who you are, right?
Yeah.
That's who I am. You don't like it, shut it. You don't have to work with me.
Right.
Well, it could be even like you're like, you might act out in ways that are intimidating, forceful.
Yeah.
Make others around you kind of scared of you,
Yeah.
or whatever. But you're not violent. You haven't hit anybody. Maybe you're just not a very fun person to be around.
Yeah.
But you could be really brilliant.
That's right.
Really knowledgeable.
That's right. That's right.
So, let's say in the reputation account, it's everybody that's worked with you is basically come up to the same conclusion that you are extremely
a butthead,
extremely difficult to work with. You are unbelievably controlling and manipulating,
yeah.
and all of it, just horrible to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it could be like we all are very busy people. You've got this red light, but underneath all that, it's like, well, this guy is brilliant in this field, absolutely brilliant. And he's gained all this NBR because he's brilliant in that field.
Yeah.
And he just has a mind for it, let's say it's physics or whatever, But somebody that's going to go work for him, they're not necessarily going to dig. They don't know him. They don't know anything about him. They just go to the site and they say, "Oh, red light. He's out of here."
Well, so let's talk about this. But
right,
let's go for a break, because we're right at the break here. So let's keep the integrity of our breaks. So
yes. Right.
So, audience, you're watching the live stream called Devil's Advocate. Thank you to the looks like 2 people who are watching us live. Really appreciate your coming and joining us. If you have any comments, you can add your comments in the comment section, and we post them, as you saw with Simone's comment. We post them here live when they show up. You are watching the Copiosis live stream called Devil's Advocate, where we ask tough questions, and today we're talking about reputation accounts. If you're interested in finding out more about Copiosis, maybe want to deep dive into our transition plan to see how we're actually making this happen, because we are being successful at that, you can go to this website and check out the transition page, where we have all that information about what we're doing to create this reality based on Copiosis. If you're interested in finding out more about our budgets and what we do with the money that comes into Copiosis, you can go here, and you can also go here and become a patron and contribute to Copiosis for as little as $1 a month. And then also, although it's not listed here, if you're interested in finding out more in-depth information, or maybe even talk with someone directly about Copiosis, or maybe you want to find out the latest and greatest of what's going on in Copiosis, you can go to our Copiosis social group on Facebook by simply searching on Facebook for Copiosis Social Group. Send us a member request. We will admit you, and then you can talk to all the people who are in the know, in the fray, making Copiosis a reality. And then finally, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button and check the box for the bell so that you're up to date on all of the upcoming live streams that we schedule, including new videos that we schedule from time to time. In fact, we have a new live stream coming up this Saturday at 9 Pacific, where Christopher Hatton, our political strategist, will be talking with me about the 5 power pillars, the pillars of power that are driving our society, and how we're using those pillars to basically depower them through our implementation plan. So thanks again for joining us. Let's get back to the conversation. So Jill, you asked what happens when this super brilliant guy who's a pain in the butt to work with turns off people who look at his reputation account. And the first thing I want to say is listen to what you said about this person. So yeah, he's a dick to work with, but he's also this brilliant guy, and he's amassed all this MBR. So I would imagine that there are going to be news stories, radio interviews, journal reports, podcasts, websites about this person's brilliance and what this person has done. All of that information will go into that person's reputation account. And so if you think about like Steve Jobs, I use Steve Jobs a lot when I talk about Copiosis, but if you think about Steve Jobs, he was really hard to work with. And yet a lot of people wanted to work at Apple while he was there.
Right.
And I think a lot of it had to do with his mystique, his magic, or whatever you want to call it. And so here was a hard ass that a lot of people were turned off, a lot of people got fired, a lot of people were cursed at in public by him, and yet people still wanted to work there. And so on the first part of my answer about this person's reputation, I don't think it would be read, because this person, while he might have a lot of negative declarations from individuals, the factual data about his contribution to the world might override that information, or at least balance it.
So it'd be maybe a yellow instead of a red, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about somebody who might be a red.
That's what I wanted to talk about.
And that could be the person that has committed and been arrested for and convicted of multiple rapes.
Yes.
Or even murder.
Yes.
And not necessarily a murder of passion, but, like the really heinous kind. I mean, all murder is heinous, but, somebody who has actually been determined by, psychologists to be a psychopath. I mean, they have severe mental illness, basically. So, if that person is, I'm not sure, like, if there's still going to be jails, or if that person would be in some type of mental facility or whatever, but they still would have, I would think, some capability of earning NBR. I mean, maybe they're a really great artist, or maybe they write the most beautiful poetry. Because oftentimes psychopaths are also very smart, intelligent people. I mean, when you look at somebody like Ted Bundy, they can they live 2 completely different lives. So, and I would say, I kind of wanted to bring this up, that if we don't know what evil is, right? How do you know what good is? You know?
Yeah.
So although we don't want evil in the world, it's going to exist and it's going to continue to exist and it will always exist. I mean, it's just, it's just the way there may be less of it, right? But it will still exist to some degree because
Yeah.
we're not perfect beings. Sorry,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would assume that someone like that is going to be in the red. Now, what you had mentioned in an earlier segment that we did was that, a person like that could be really of no positive value. And it could be that people say, well, I'm not going to give you food and I'm not going to give you shelter and I'm not going to give you anything. You can go, whatever. But I think that's a very slippery slope. You know, at at this point, well, now we're saying we're not giving you, this group, people below this, people that are this evil, and then can it escalate to, well, people that are like this, and then it escalates to people that are like that, and then do you see what I'm saying? To me, it seems like a slippery slope.
Yeah. So you're saying that eventually it can be imagined where ordinary behavior falls below the okay scale, and then you start
Exactly.
penalizing
Exactly.
ordinary people for just being human. Yeah, I
Right.
get it. So let's,
You see what I'm saying? I
yeah,
think that's a danger, I guess, when, maybe group of 10 people, because you're so different than you're working with these people on a project, say, and this whole group of 10 people just doesn't like the way that you present things. So like, oh, this person's so difficult. They won't agree with anything, just because you don't agree with all of these people, you know, that you have different ideas, so you don't agree with them, they don't like you, or maybe they just don't like you.
yeah,
Maybe you have BO or whatever, I
yeah,
don't know, but they don't like you,
yeah.
so they don't want to work with you. So they're all going to throw in declaration. I mean, do you see how? I don't. I'm
So
not
let
sure where I'm headed.
well, let's talk about some of
I
these
think you get
cases.
it.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these cases. First, let's talk about someone who's in the red for a crime of passion, not a psychopath. We'll talk about the
Yes.
psychopaths in a minute. So let's
Okay.
say let's say someone murders somebody, and they murder
Hmm.
them because they were just really mad for some reason. It's
Right.
hard to think that it would get to that point given what we talked about bar fights. I don't know if we talked about that on a show. Remember that bar fight conversation we
Yeah,
had?
but I think it's more like, when, you know, crimes of passion generally between men and women,
Gotcha. Okay. So let's take that
right?
circumstance. Yeah. So some guy
Okay.
accuses his wife of cheating on him. He swears to God he has the evidence, and she's denying it out the yin yang, and he's not believing her protestation. So in his rage, he kills her. So there's murder.
Right.
There's murder.
Or he
Uh,
catches her in bed with the guy
oh yeah,
and
even worse.
murders
Yeah.
her
So
and him both,
and
right?
him both. Yeah, yeah.
That would be a true instant crime of passion in
That's
my mind.
mine too.
That's
Mine too.
like, no denying it,
Exactly.
girlfriend,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it, yeah, and it might even go so far as him dismembering this, cutting off the guy's penis or something like that. A crime that we've seen like that before. That's certainly a crime of passion, right? Where you're cutting some guy's penis
Hmm.
off. So,
Hmm.
of course, if the evidence, I want to say if evidence proved his guilt, but it's hard not to prove it if he's there and the people are dead. But if the evidence proved he was guilty, he would have to face the consequences of committing that crime. And of course, there will likely be um, let's call them sanctions in copiosis as opposed to punishments, because we're not trying to mete out punishment. Punishment is based on an old belief system that we're moving away from. What we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent future incidences as a result of having an incident. So we want to take
Right.
that person and we want to turn that person into someone who isn't like that in the future. And in order to do that, you have to sanction that person in some way. So you need to put them someplace where they can learn how to be this other person that we want them to be. And so, but nevertheless, they did the crime, so they're going to have that in their declaration account. And it's likely that the parents of the woman, his in-laws, right? Yeah, his in-laws are going to file declarations in his account, and all the family members of the dead guy are going to file declarations too. Um, and it's possible that some members of each of those families might file declarations that say the guy did a good thing because they shouldn't have been cheating in the first place or something like that. Anything could be put in there that the organization might
Right.
approve
Yeah.
as long as it's proven to be factual or accurate. So this person comes out of this training better equipped to handle his emotions, and yet he still has a red blaring on his reputation account. So in the first couple of months, or maybe even years, he might try to get hired someplace, but people might not be, not hired, but get into another organization and contribute in that organization, but they might not be willing to allow him to do that. That's not a problem because, first of all, he has NBR coming in continuously from every other net benefit that he's created throughout his life up to that point. That's the first thing. He's still getting NBR. Number two, he can do almost anything to increase his MBR, including he could participate in the organization that he participated in as a client that had him come out a better person. He could turn around and start volunteering in that organization and get MBR, and he'd get a lot of MBR because he would be using his own personal experience to help people like him become better people. So that's one thing.
Right.
He could go out and speak to audiences or recovery groups or schools and
Yeah.
help people
Right.
better understand their
Right.
emotions. There's all kinds of things that this person could do without having to join another group of people to receive MBR. Now, if you think about it, today there are some situations where people get ostracized from their community. For example, I don't know if you remember, but last year, I think it was, or maybe it was the year before, a woman, actually, was it? Yeah, she lost her job because she fraudulently called the police on this African American who she said was attacking her. And in actuality, he was trying to get her to keep her dog under her control. As a result of calling the police falsely on this African American and
Yeah,
claiming
I
that a
remember that.
black guy
Yeah.
was assaulting me, attacking me in the park, she lost her job. And then a whole bunch of other terrible things happened to her as a result of this, including losing her
Right.
dog for a little while. So
Right.
we already see how our communities kind of react pretty strongly to egregious behavior. So it's possible in
Right.
copiosis that this passion murderer might not receive some necessities as a result of his bad behavior,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
yet
Yeah.
and yet the people who do give him necessities are going to be rewarded NBR. So my bet is that there will be people somewhere, probably even people who form special groups just to do this, to make sure that people who get ostracized from their community don't starve or live outside or don't get medical care and
Yeah.
things like that. So in
It's
copiosis, it's not that big of a risk to have a terrible reputation account. You're just not going to have some people who are mostly strangers who are not going to be interested in working with you for a little while. Meanwhile, there are people who know this guy who don't think he's such a bad guy. Some people will probably agree. They'll probably be like, I would have killed that butthead too if I caught him in the bed with my wife, kind of a thing, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so those
I
people
mean,
are going to help him too.
you don't know what especially if something's been building for maybe a particularly long period of time, and then it's just
Boils over.
your anger and your frustration and all of that has been building, and you haven't been really coping with it or dealing with it, or getting any assistance with your feelings. Maybe you even haven't discussed it with any of your friends because you're embarrassed, or
That's
you don't really want to know the truth, like you're just so in love and you just thought this person was this or that. Yeah.
This
So
is
all
why
of that
this,
stuff.
this is why I like you being on the show, is because you're able to think through this and see the other side of your issue. And you're absolutely right. All those things are accurate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she could have been just the most evil, wicked thing in the world. And all of his friends have been seeing it forever and like, what do
Yeah.
you like about this person? And then, she's cheating on you and, oh no, she's wonderful. She's perfect. And then it's just all that crashes together, in that moment when you catch her in bed with a guy,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, all the veils flew away.
Fall away. That's right.
Fall away. And it's just,
Exactly.
I get it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So, yeah, it's just, I just,
Well, hang on a
I
second.
feel a
Hang on,
little,
hang on a second.
okay.
Let's talk about, so what happens? So this person murdered these people, and down the line, at some point, this person gets it, right? He's like, all right, you're right. I probably shouldn't have killed those people. I was really angry. Um, I feel that in the moment I was justified because I was temporarily incapacitated mentally by my rage. And if I had it to
Hmm.
do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have done it that way. So at that point, what we've put in place for the reputation accounts is kind of like it's called Jubilee in Christianity. It's this point in the future at which your past bad reputation is expunged from your account and you get a fresh start. And so
Oh, I thought it was like a permanent record
originally it was
that could,
permanent, but we heard more than you, Jill, make this pushback. And so we decided to change the nature of the reputation account so that there's a cycle
right,
where so
right,
your past deeds don't follow you for your entire life. You get a
forever
fresh
and ever
start.
and ever. You're a different person at 30 than you were at 20. You're a different person at 40 or 50 or 60 than you were when you were, 12. Come on,
That's exactly right. That's
people
exactly
grow.
right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So now let's
Yeah.
look at that other guy that you mentioned, the psychopath, or the psychopath, who on one hand seems like a wonderful guy and has a great reputation account, but on the other hand, we haven't realized that he's a serial killer.
Right. Hmm.
But then it turns out that he is a serial killer, and the police uncover all his dirty deeds, 7 bodies or what have you over the
Okay.
course of 2 years. He gets apprehended, taken to court. The courts indict him, they convict him. And then he goes to someplace similar as the first person went, and they determine though that this person can't be released because he is mentally
A
incapable.
danger to,
Yeah, a
to
danger.
society.
That's
Hmm.
right, a danger to
Yes.
society.
Yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
it's possible that in the future we'll have genetic engineering capable of turning that person into a relatively less dangerous person. But let's say that we don't. So what happens then is, of course, his reputation account is going to have that clinical diagnosis. So he's in trouble in some sense because hardly, I would imagine, very few people are going to want to be in a room privately with this person for obvious reasons. And if he's a danger to society, it's highly likely that most societies, no matter how big or small, aren't going to want him in there. So he needs a place to be. Now, there's more than one psychopath on the planet. And as we continue to move through the future, we'll identify more and more. So we're going to need a place to put these people. Prison doesn't make sense because that's, in my opinion, inhumane treatment. There a
Yeah.
better way? Is there a better way to house these people so that they're not a danger to society, but at the same time they get to be a human being? They're not
Hmm.
monsters. They're just people with a different way of being in the world. Like you said, evil will always
Hmm.
be. I'll put it
Right.
differently and just say there will always be differences among human beings, and some of those differences make those different people not compatible with the rest of us. So, what are we going to do
Right.
with them? We have to put them someplace, but we don't have to put them behind bars. We can put them
No.
someplace where they're comfortable and they can have a happy life.
Yeah. Right.
And, And I don't know the nature of psychopathy, but right now I don't know that we have the ability to treat a psychopath so that that person is no longer a psychopath. As long as that person
Right.
remains
Correct.
with that clinical definition and behaves in that way, he has to be separated from society. But that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that separation has to be barbaric or even penal.
Yeah.
It can be quite
Right. Right.
luxurious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, but they could still perform functions or actions that would gain them NBR,
No doubt.
you know, and they could and they could still, I mean, if someone wanted to be in a relationship with that person, they could still join them in having a relationship with that person, knowing
Yep.
full well what this person is,
Yep. Yep.
Um,
They would just have to do it
uh,
inside of that community that that person lives in.
right. Exactly. Exactly. They
Yep.
would, and the person who isn't the psychopath could go about their daily lives and do whatever they do and just be, part of this person's life in that particular community. So I
Precisely.
can see kind of how that all works.
Let me just
Um,
add one other thing at this point. So you're right. So remember, as you've said, these people sometimes lead double lives, and in the good part of their double life, they're actually quite
yeah,
proficient contributors. So they
yeah,
can live in this separate community, separate from society, but still interact with that community in ways that allow them to give their talents to the broader society and get
exactly.
MBR as a result of it. And if they want to
Right,
spend
right,
their MBR on some luxury item, they can still do that. Now, let's
right.
say
Yeah,
let's say Ted Bundy wants to take a Carnival cruise. Well, he probably can't take the Carnival cruise.
right. Yeah, yeah. It would be restricted to that particular community, right?
Yeah,
But
I
that
would think
community
so.
could have great shops. They could have great, they could have luxury items available within that community.
That's
Blah
right.
blah 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 blah.
That's right.
Okay, so here's my other side of that. What about the victims' families?
Hmm.
Okay, we want him to suffer.
Yeah.
He should suffer.
Yeah.
He should suffer. He should be dead. He should, he shouldn't even what good is that person to this planet?
Yeah.
None. Zero. Zip.
Yeah.
I want him dead. I just I just can't imagine if my own child was murdered by some psychopath and how I would feel about,
Yeah.
him going and living in this luxury community and having whatever life he wants, and my child doesn't get to live a life.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, how do
yeah.
you how do you how do you
Yeah. Let's
balance that?
yeah.
Or
Let's take our next break and then we'll come back because that's a very good question. So, folks, you're watching the Copiosis live stream here on the Copiosis YouTube channel. If you're interested in finding out more about the information we put on the channel, you want to know that in advance, please feel free to click that subscribe button and then click the bell so that you get notified of new shows that we're posting on the YouTube channel. And as a matter of fact, this weekend on Saturday at 9 Pacific time, we're going to be talking about the 5 power pillars with our political strategist Christopher Hatton and how we're using the power of the power pillars against the power pillars in order to create the society that we want, the society based on copiosis. If you want to find out more about copiosis itself, you can go to this website where we talk about everything related to copiosis, including our transition plan. And then if you're interested in finding out about the way we use the money that comes into copiosis, you can go and look at our budget here at Patreon, where you can also become a patron yourself for as little as $1 a month. Okay, so wow, you gave a really impassioned plea on behalf of the victims' families.
yeah, yeah. Why should this person get to live even? It's
Yeah,
like, why should they enjoy life? Why should they have anything?
yeah,
Why can't we stick them in a cave in a dark hole and never to see the light?
yeah, Yeah. It's interesting because for there are family members of murder victims and rape victims and torture victims and all kinds of other heinous crimes who have forgiven the perpetrator. So not it's clear that not everybody has that. And like I said, you did a really good job of like channeling that rage and desire for retribution.
Yeah,
But not everybody feels that way.
right.
But for those who do, you know, that is a response to injustice that has been there since time began. Like human beings, I mean, that's why we had all those um, what do they call them? Family feuds. You know, the game show Family Feud, the name of that game show comes from someplace. It's because in the old days and throughout time, if some family member killed another family member, the other family member, the surviving family members would go and exact revenge on the other family members. That's why where they get these
Mhm.
family feuds. And so there's this tradition of seeking revenge when some family member of yours
Well,
gets killed.
eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Exactly, Jill. And so
Mhm.
the problem with that is it creates a lot of problems. First and foremost for the family. Like when a person, I don't believe that if my mother was killed by a murderer and then the murderer was then murdered by the state, that that would absolve my loss of my mom. My mom is still in the grave. She didn't come back because that dude was murdered. You know, it just doesn't do very, that kind of punishment on the victim doesn't do very much. And so there's an element, there's a psychosocial cultural shift relative to the desire to seek revenge that needs to occur within all of us, where we we are able to forgive and forget and move on rather than trying to exact feel better as a result of someone else experiencing pain and anguish and
Punishment,
torture and punishment. Yeah,
punishment.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's I mean, I could, yeah, it's just that's a really sticky problem, but human beings
That's
are
an evolution. That's a evolution
there
of
you go
thinking.
again, there you go again, you've already gotten to the answer. Yeah,
It's
it's
an evolution of thinking. It's
yes,
an evolution of our culture.
yep,
And um, and as painful as it is, killing somebody else doesn't ease that pain. It might ease it for us that day that they're, executed or whatever, but the pain's still there. Will always be there. The loss of that person will always be felt.
right.
So, to me, with the way copiosis works, the family who are the victims of that crime could be compensated, I guess, by NBR for the loss of their family member.
Well, so they don't get MBR to compensate the loss because no net benefit has accrued. But what they you get that. So like if a family member dies, where is the net benefit that merits the survivors getting MBR? There isn't any.
Well, I guess that's the question, right? That is a question. So, would it be if your child is murdered, their life is taken from another? Is that different than if they get in a car accident or they have a terminal illness or, whatever other causes of death?
Yeah, it's not a
It's no
it's no
it's no
different.
different.
Mm-mm.
So, you may be, maybe that was your only child and your NBR has been coming from the care and, of that child. So now you have to find some other way to gain NBR.
And there's
Does
yeah, and there's lots of ways to do that. So we want to be careful and not make the mistake that you care for the child because of the MBR stream. You're caring for the child because
No,
you
no,
love
no,
the
no,
child.
no, no, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
I'm not suggesting that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not suggesting that.
yeah,
It's just been the thing that you are passionate about was raising your child. So that's what you've been doing. And as a consequence, you got MBR.
Yes.
Well, now that this child is gone, you're not, I mean, you still have your housing and all your basic needs met, but you're no longer, you know, generating NBR necessarily, right?
From that one service. That's correct. And so
Right.
so what you're talking about is victim. It's called justice for victims. Yeah. So
Um,
like
Victim compensation.
yes. And so the
Yes.
so the
So do
so
you think there would be something like that in copiosis?
yeah.
Like victim compensation?
Well, compensation in the form of the following. So first of all healthcare is provided to everyone at no cost. So the victims have the opportunity to avail themselves of mental health services that can help them soothe what we called before this evolutionary process that needs to happen. So there's that.
Right.
And then
Mm-hmm.
think about think about the reaction we talked about where the community today goes negative on someone who does something negative, like murders people. How society goes, you're never going to work here. You can't patronize our shops. We don't even want you living here. Get the hell out. You know, that kind of
Right.
response,
Yeah.
right? Don't you think
Exactly.
the
Gotcha.
community, and we have examples where communities do the exact opposite for people who have experienced tragedy. They offer things for free.
Yes.
They put people up. They give them
They
money.
give.
They give them
Yeah.
money. They do
Yeah.
everything they can to
Yeah.
help soothe that person. So imagine that kind of response. And think of this too. And this is, again, this isn't to confuse the charity. When the people do those things, the people doing those things get MBR. Why? Because they're benefiting somebody.
Right.
So there's more, even
Yeah.
more incentive for the community to rally around those victims and
Mm.
restore their well-being. And I would
Yeah.
imagine because everyone's free and they don't have to earn a living, so they're not bogged down by 9 to 5ers, I imagine that there's more capacity for people to respond in that way. So victim compensation becomes like a tidal wave as opposed to this surprise thing that happens today.
Right. Yeah.
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 Because
Well, that.
all the MBR in the
Go
world
ahead.
is not gonna make a person feel
No,
better when their
money is
kids
not
murder.
going to do
That's
enough
right.
money, but that's not going to compensate you for the loss of your child,
But
just like it doesn't now.
yes, but when a community rallies around you as an expression of their recognition of your pain, that can provide the healing, right?
Right.
Right,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right.
That's what you need the most. It's
Yeah,
just
someone to
people
hear you.
to be there for you and help you cope and get through it and, you know, crawl out of bed every day.
That's right.
Right. You
I
know,
mean, I mean, some
yeah.
bar
Yeah.
some bar owner who offers bar services, luxury hors d'oeuvres and drinks and things as luxuries might say to that family, "Come here anytime, it, and consider all of my things I offer as necessities for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
Some car
Yeah.
manufacturer might say, "Whenever you need a vehicle, you've got it, no worries, for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
There could be
Right.
all kinds of
Right.
amazing things. Carnival Cruise Lines could
All
say,
kinds of amazing things come out of it. Yeah. Hmm.
"Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's that. Yeah. We got it. A little crazy deep there, don't we?
we sure did,"
But
and
that's really good. That
it is
really
good.
that helps me comprehend it better. But I okay, so what just one thing of this conversation and then I'm not really clear on.
Yeah.
How do we prevent slippery slope?
Yeah, so we have to go to the wisdom of the crowd, which is this philosophy that says when you get enough people together, the wisdom of that group is smarter than the wisdom of a smaller group or even an individual. And so, and as you gather more and more people, the inherent goodness of humanity rises to the surface. So whenever there's someone who is suffering at the hands of community backlash, usually
Hmm.
somewhere there's someone who wants to ensure that individual doesn't succumb. Like I've seen footage where, just as an example, and this might be a little incendiary, but it is a good example of the slippery slope, where a KKK member or racist might be protesting, and all of a sudden black people descend on him and start beating the shit out of him, and he's like really getting injured. And then I've seen where a black person will wade in there, grab the white supremacist and take him to the hospital, or beat off the people who are beating him up and things like that. So there are always
Yeah.
examples where this slippery slope argument,
Goodness can prevail.
yes, very perfect, yes, where goodness prevails, yes, yeah,
Right. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. And there's, you know, I think that most would agree that there is goodness in all of us. Like
yes,
sometimes the evil in us, for whatever reason, can come forward,
for a little while, yeah,
like,
for a little while,
but yeah, for a minute,
yeah,
like your kid's being a little brat, and you're like, ugh, you know,
right,
you just want to,
wring that neck.
yes, but you resist, you resist. For a moment, you just like to punch him out, but you don't, because the goodness comes back.
That's
Like,
right,
no, that's
that's
not
right,
acceptable,
that's
right?
right,
But
right,
for some, if you've been raised that way, that's how you raise kids.
right,
You
right,
just,
right,
yeah,
right,
yeah. So yeah, it's interesting.
it is, isn't it?
It's really interesting. But I think so. In conclusion,
Yes, well said.
I can see how a reputation account is basically just a combination of all those histories that we have, our medical history and our school history and our job history and
Hmm.
our, relationship histories
Hmm.
and our, whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's all somewhere in the public eye
Today,
anyway,
that's right.
or available to the public with permission.
Yep.
And so it's just combining those all into one place so that, now here's my last question. Could you let someone see a certain part of
Y-
your relationship account? Like,
Absolutely.
if they wanted to view the
Just
schools
this
that
one thing.
you
Yes.
attended, yeah, you could
Yes.
allow that.
Yes. And
Mhm.
even if, for example, you had red on your indicator and the guy that you're talking with says, "What's this red about?" And you said something like, um, "Well, I got in a bar fight." And he says, or maybe you and on the initiative said, "I got in a bar fight. Here's the record that shows what happened in my reputation account." You can let him see just that record that shows, okay, you got in a bar fight. Here's the reason why you were apprehended by the police. You got um, um, indicted, charged, and convicted of like unruly public
Convicted.
behavior or whatever. And then it shows that you
Right.
went through this counseling, you went through that counseling, you passed this test, you passed that test, and now you've been cleared of it. And so the guy says, "Thanks for showing
Right.
me that. That's what I wanted to know." Yeah. So you can show individual
Right.
parts of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. All
Are
right.
we
Well,
good?
I
I
think we're
think we're
doing.
good. Okay, good. So
I think
thanks.
we're okay.
I think we're good. So audience, thank you so much for watching. You've seen yet another episode of Devil's Advocate with Jill Dell and myself. This has been one of the best ones. We really went deep on reputation accounts. If you're interested in finding out more about Copiosis, you can head over to copiosis.com and find out everything you want to know about it. If you want to interact with someone live about Copiosis, you can go to our Copiosis social group on Facebook. Just search for Copiosis social group on Facebook, send in a member request, and we will let you in. And then you can talk with people who are actually in the weeds with regard to implementing our transition plan. Finally, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, click the bell. And I haven't said this before, but if you enjoyed this video, please like it, because that will help with our with the YouTube algorithm and being able to show this live stream to other people. Otherwise, on behalf of Jill and I, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you checking out Copiosis, and we will see you next Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific. Bye.
Bye.